Hello and welcome. I'm Adriana Delore, and this is Reclaiming the Future, a podcast about what we're missing as AI quietly rewrites the rules of work, identity, and purpose, about building a future we actually want to live in. I'm a former corporate futurist. I spent years helping Fortune 100 companies prepare for what's coming next. Now I'm turning that lens towards something more human, you. Each week, I talk to people thinking deeply about the future. Together, we unpack a range of possible futures, some better than others, and explore the gap between where we're headed and where we actually want to go, so that you can help shape the best possible future for yourself and for your dreams. Because the future isn't something we wait for, it's something we claim. And it starts with reclaiming our voice, our value, and to dream in ways we could have never imagined before. If you want to understand how your world is about to change and what you can do with that knowledge, you're in the right place. I'm here with Brennan. Brennan's background is a story in itself. He's worked in government communications, launched a sustainable materials company, and has this consistent thread of belief that humans have to adapt to a very, very changing world. We want to talk about why we're doing this, why it matters now, and how we're thinking about the future. Not just from the perspective of emerging tech, but from the very real human need to find meaning, adapt, and thrive. So welcome, Brennan. We met at a really cool event in Miami where very influential family offices and industry leaders and celebrities came together to talk about how they can create impact and help each other. And I had talked about my past with some of the big names like Verizon and IBM, where we looked far into the future and figure out what innovation will look like so that those companies could build things. Everything today is sort of coming true much faster than what we thought would happen. And it's important for people not just to be aware of how fast things are going and where we're going, what we're moving towards, but to understand who they want to be in that future and what is the infrastructure and systems that have to be in place to support people in that new world. For example, you can't really send kids to college anymore and expect them to have a career because a lot of those jobs will either change a lot or maybe be gone. Companies have been taking our data for a very long time, like Google, and using it for advertising, and that's been okay. But when it comes down to AI replacing humans as a whole in work environments, do humans deserve some sort of compensation now for the data that they put out and how they contribute to AI? A lot of big important questions. And I don't know at what point in those conversations you heard me speak. What did I say to make you be like, okay, we got to talk about this online, and I got to bring in all my friends and people that I know to support this mission, um, and get this out there.
1,000,000%, because I spend a lot of time at a lot of networking events. Facilitating connections is what I do. And you definitely jumped off the page. You're the first person who well, first you said, I tell the future. And that got me interested. But you're the first person that I've come across that actually put educated thought into new industry, right? And that's something that I just loved about what you were thinking. I was like, that equates to everything I do, everything, not just some or not just this industry and not just that, but it touches every single thing I do. And to be able to take that information and quantify it into real value is a gift that I saw in you. And I was like, man, I got to know her. So here we are.
Well, thank you for that. At the event, you talked a lot about your work with the government and Washington and how you actually help businesses find grant money um, from the government, and sometimes it's pretty significant grants out there, millions, billions of dollars just waiting to be claimed. And it sort of clicked for me right there. Wait a minute, the government should care about people's future. And who better than the government with billions of dollars of sometimes unused funding to plug in and help figure this out?
Yeah.
So I thought it was really cool. Tell us a little bit more about the grants and how you're involved, and are they thinking about this future at all?
What I don't think what they're taking into account is job creation. That's what I liked about your thought is you were like, well, where's the human component? Where do we create jobs? And so I feel like the government does look over things and a lot until it kind of hits them in the face, right? And, And it's a really an education piece. We need to educate people on how to work inside of AI, and that's going to come from inside the industry. But yeah, the government's extremely interested in all of this. Donald Trump put out three main areas for the United States to be investing in: manufacturing, energy, and AI. Those are the priorities of the United States government right now. And AI is, let's just be frank, it's going to be the facilitator of all major industries within the next 5 years, not 10, maybe most of them will be sooner than that. They're building data centers and they're working out the power solution. That in itself has brought a lot of innovation and a lot of brand new ideas on how we produce power, how we reuse power, different things like that, right down to taking plastics and turning that back into oil and petroleum products that we've made everything out of. Instead of going into the landfills, they want to put those into what they call biomimicry facilities, where they're reusing trash to create energy. Because the energy demand for AI is so great, it now makes money, which makes sense to recycle, right? Before there was no process for it, right? Nobody had ever found a way to monetize recycling, which, and let's face it, that's what incentivizes, right? So that's where I see it, along with paying people for their data. Like now you can pay people to recycle because this recycle goes to energy waste streams and things like that. There can be reward programs inside of this outside of just your data that I feel like people can get involved in. If you're doing these things, they send you a check when you do that. And it's the same concept. And so that's where I see the synergies coming.
You said something really interesting just now, which is that governments really know how to incentivize people. Meaning, if they want to keep the earth running, or they want people to contribute to the economy in some way,
Yep.
they work on incentives. And the AI path is sort of this new way of contributing to the economy. So all these things that humans used to do that had to do with knowledge or process or tasks are sort of being taken over. What does that do to the economy? That's a big question that I haven't heard or read about anywhere, but I've been thinking about a lot. And the interesting part is that the government is not very much involved, meaning it's the tech companies that are controlling how human value is decided or isn't a part of this system. So humans aren't really contributing. It's sort of
Right.
circumventing the humans and creating value for companies and for individuals who want to build things, but not necessarily thinking about the whole system. And so, in my mind, the government and the tech companies have to come together at some point, because the next AI, the super intelligent AI, is not going to come from a government. It's going to come from a technology company that has very profit-based goals, not necessarily economy-based or human-based. As we think about this idea of a think tank that could go out and do research to figure out, okay, well, what's going to be needed? What are the actual problems to solve? You observe people and you come back with insights. You might send anthropologists to places where it's difficult to do things. You interview people. You see what's going on. By bringing in people who are big names from industries like Hollywood, from energy renewables, from the government, we get those insights from experts on the podcast. So this podcast, I think, will very much shape the kinds of categories and areas to look into. You've literally worked across every future triggering sector: energy, materials, government. What made you feel like now is the moment to?
I'm a I'm a very purpose driven person. When I see things that affect people directly, and this is one of those things. This is very much something I've thought about a lot, and a lot, as you said, in my work, from the government to the private industry. I'm like, man, that is so awesome. But what happens to the millions of people doing that job right now? Right? Like, I love the efficiency. I do not like what it does to the everyday person. I don't know if you know this. One of the smart age AIs just got released in Saudi Arabia. They just did it in their medical field. It's 100% doing medical procedures now, not partially, 100% from start to finish, from blood transfusions, cleaning out blood, to actual operations. There's no doctors, no surgeons, no nurses in there for contamination, right? And so if you think about it, for everybody who put years and years into studying, and that's coming extremely fast to a corner near you. How do we adapt to those? So when you started talking about the things you did in Verizon, and what you wanted to do with the future, it connected everything that I've been working on. And you know, you see things that you worry about. The number one way people get their news and their information is podcasts now. Number one. It's not legacy media, CNN, Fox News. Nobody even goes to the library and looks it up. They all watch things like this. And so I'm like, this is how we start affecting change. We educate people. How do we keep our economy rolling? We could set ourselves back into the Stone Age if we're not careful. Our power grid is not up to date. So it is about rolling this out in a safe and effective manner. I don't know if you've seen, but Facebook put up their giant AI data center in California, just in Northern California somewhere. But the town that's closest to it lost all their water pressure and has been having rolling blackouts because AI takes so much water and so much power that it's affecting an entire town. Um, and it's just Facebook, right? So if you think about all the applications for AI, if we don't do this right, if we don't do this in a responsible manner, we will cause rolling blackouts across gigantic cities for in the name of what? Speed, efficiency. I see very much a lot of the tech industries putting a lot of profits over people. They're just all racing to have the smartest and best, and nobody's putting thought in to the backside of that. So having a think tank and having a podcast wrapped around these world changing things that are happening, not state or nation changing, very much world changing, is imperative in my personal opinion. Man, I'm so glad to be a part of it with you. What made you start thinking about AI as somebody who's not wrapped up in it all the time or somebody who hasn't been where I've been? What made you think about this? How did this even come about?
I had a really long career in really kind of a blend between business and technology and innovation. My number one nugget for companies that everybody was like, wow, this is so amazing, was that, you have to look at people's behavior and observing people and understanding what's actually going on. And that's what made huge shifts. I've been at companies like eBay, IBM, and worked with like Watson AI and with companies like Estee Lauder, Kraft Heinz, Honda, 12 different industries. Verizon was looking for someone who can kind of blend a deep understanding of a vast number of technologies and a sense of human behavior to help them figure out what the future might look like for the next 3 to 10 years. Because they were thinking about becoming a technology company, meaning there was a whole like billion-dollar fund dedicated to, hey, if you guys figure this out, like we might invest in this and spin out these concepts and prepare for the technology and the innovation that needs to come by partnering with other startups to essentially build on 5G. Verizon already had 5G labs, which was a concept where startups could come in and sort of ideate around how they can build on 5G and make technologies of the future. But this was a bigger question to like, what will people need in 5 to 10 years? What are going to be their challenges? We made 14 predictions. A lot of them, I think like 60, 70% already came true in a sense that the behavior had happened faster than we thought, years faster. And small companies, startups started addressing those things. I mean, it's surprised me in a good way, but also it sort of freaked me out. It took a pandemic-like event for us to start working from home. We could have done that years ago. Our office was where our laptop was, right? So this was possible way before the pandemic. There just wasn't an urgency to make it happen. Flying cars and self-sustaining companies that don't really need people, that's possible today. We're not doing it because there's no urgency. But the thing is, in some way, it's not up to us. As I saw trends, and especially at Verizon, where we're looking at big questions like what happens to emerging technology, what happens to people, what do we what events do we think are going to take place? It made me realize how fast we're moving, and it made me want to make a much bigger impact than selling things to people. I wanted to build a future to live in a world where we are not giving up our jobs to be replaced, but we're giving them up because we can now do what we couldn't do before. Uh, Or we can move on to new things that we didn't think were valuable, but will become valuable now that AI can do all the things that have to do with knowledge and systems and processes. So that's kind of what got me here and my thinking process. And I'm so excited that we can share some of this stuff with the world because I think people are curious, but they kind of have nowhere to look for this information. And I think that great minds have points of view on what things need to become possible and what things need to get funded. And that information also needs to be out there for the world to hear because the right people who can have who have the power to put some funds and some structure behind this, I think are looking for the right space to dedicate those funds to. And I think this is where those ideas come from.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree with you. There's something that, you know, and I've always heard that change comes through tragedy. You know what I mean? And I think we've all been kind of programmed to just be safe in our own lane until something tragic happens, like COVID, right? People could have been, they could have been working from home. They didn't. That's kind of something that I noticed in the military, is we never did anything different until tragedy strikes, right? Well, now we better make a rule about that. And that's what I love about this. It's kind of preemptively thinking, okay, where's tragedy going to come from? Where is this going to hurt? And how do we minimize that impact? Okay, because it's coming. All right. And if we don't start forward thinking and if we don't start being proactive instead of reactive, it could make 5% of us obsolete in a couple of years. And
Actually, the one thing that big names have talked about in the media, like Elon Musk, for example, is this idea of basic universal income, which is, by the way, for people who don't know, is that everybody, let's say 90% of humans in the US or in the world, are no longer needed for company roles because they're done by AI. And so what do humans do, right? They're given a stipend. Here's your fixed amount of money so you can go buy food and most importantly, buy things from all these companies that are putting things out there. I was born in a country that went through communism. I just remember when I was little, communism is not fun. I think capitalism has
no,
its issues, but at least when you have opportunities and you can strive towards that, it's like, okay, you can kind of do anything. Like go get it done, go figure it out. And that's drive. If you take that away from people and put them on basic universal income, depression happens when we don't know how to respond to change. When knowledge is worth zero, what do we do? That's kind of the urgency for me.
well, I've been thinking about that question because you posed that to me a couple of times. And something that I would like to see, and I mean, I don't know how to make this happen, was we need to bring AI into education. But if we just dumb ourselves down to where, oh, AI's got it, let me just look it up, we will be in some serious trouble. What's the most expensive thing out there? Handmade things, things made by people, right? Things made or invented, a painting by somebody who's just completely gifted. There is a certain amount of human that cannot be replicated. So I would like to see us become smarter.
As far as being smart, like if you want to read something from a book and be smart, that's going to be gone, right? However, I think that the next level of learning is sort of like developing what your gifts are. But there wasn't this push to develop people's gifts in the way that is most authentic to them. And because in order to be famous for something, in order to be needed for something, someone else had to recognize you, like a big TV network, or you had to be in a movie, or you had to be um, a baseball player, right? Like somewhere where
Right.
an entity said, "Hey, here you go, people, watch this person," right? And then you get the audience. I think we'll be able to flip the script. AI will be able to make all the paintings you want, just kind of remixing the future, and they'll be cool. But because the supply will be so large, they're not going to be worth a lot of money. And people don't pay a lot of money for pretty art. People pay a lot of money for the meaning behind it. Like, that example of someone buying, I think it was like a banana on a white canvas, or another instance, just a plain white canvas. And I think both were bought for millions of dollars because it was about having the meaning, not the
Yeah.
not the visual itself. And when someone creates a song that goes off the chart, it comes from like not just pain, but a lived human experience. And this idea to relate to other people, I think will be um, will be something that will scale in some way. I won't, each one of us won't be able to be, a global celebrity, but there's a micro community of people who are gonna want to dive into exactly what you're about. Nate introduced me to Joe Pollock, and Joe's assistant emailed me back and was like, "Hey, by the way, Joe's super busy, but here, like, try to contact him on this link, Delphi.ai. All you see is a picture of Joe Pollock, and underneath it's call, text, WhatsApp." And so I'm like afraid to press call because I'm like, I don't want to get him at the wrong time. I'm like, what do I even say? I'm not prepared, right? So I go Google Delphi AI. I realized that the Delphi AI is a platform where you can clone yourself. You can clone yourself on Delphi AI by books that you've written, materials, posts on Instagram, videos that you've recorded, like any content that's out there about you. You can upload it there, and it creates a digital twin. And when somebody calls you or texts you, it responds from that knowledge base. And I thought, wow, this is so brilliant. But the terrible part is that people don't realize that in order to clone yourself, the clone needs information, needs data, needs all this big knowledge base, right? And so
Yeah,
if you haven't been writing books or putting out content or YouTube videos or podcasts or sort of like thought leadership content about what you say and what you're about and your the special things about you that you can advise people on, then you
yeah,
cannot clone yourself. Then you'll be left behind. Tony Robbins can clone himself because there's plenty of videos about Tony Robbins talking about exactly how he does things. Um, so he can clone himself. But someone who, has a couple of kids and has a great family and a job in a corporation as a VP of marketing or something like that probably cannot clone themselves. And unless you start putting out information, it can only become scalable if there's something to scale. I
right.
remember when I was at IBM in the early days of Watson, and we were talking to companies who wanted to create Watson experiences, and especially
Yeah,
visual experiences. Like, give me a one. There was one project where a retail company wanted to be able to tell just from somebody who's dressed in clothing what is wrong with their bra size, like how to give them a different bra size.
really.
Because most women apparently wear the wrong bra size for what they should be wearing. The way you would train AI back then is you have to give it a lot of instances to give it examples of what something is and what something isn't. So if I'm training AI on what a basketball is, I have to give it at the time like 30,000 images of what a basketball is and images of everything a basketball is not. So 30,000 images of apples, 30,000 images of watermelons, 30,000 images of soccer balls, anything else round. And that would only give it to like 75% to 85% accuracy
Yeah.
for it to recognize what a basketball is.
Mhm.
Now AI is a little bit smarter than that. Like it understands context, it can pull from different places. It's a neural network. But point is, it needs a lot of information in order to give you
Yeah.
something very intellectual and useful and helpful. So if you as an individual don't have your information out there or enough of it, then you're missing the opportunity.
Right. Right. That's something that I thought about too. Is as we use AI, like in my industry, right? My company has a better award percentage than any grant program out there because we use the human to human connection. We write stories. We don't just line item and here's your information that you need. We're not a data set. We really try to use keywords and bring the humanity out of it. So when people are reading the grants and they're deciding awards, it sticks with them, right? It stays with them. And so there's that human component.
I think that human contribution will become expensive
Yeah.
because it's so unique. And if you can contribute in a way that is special, that is beyond AI, whether it's creatively or empathetically or with your life story, like, if you grew up in a certain environment and you've been able to succeed, like people want to hear that. And it's been difficult to scale it. Now you can scale it, but it needs to be out there. You need to be talking about it, maybe podcasting about it. People are not self-starters. Most people follow a path. That's why we have schools and education. We've built a habit of like, here's what you do to earn money, right? So that's fine. Take the jobs that we don't like doing. Those jobs are meant for machines anyways. But how do we become more human? What does that even mean to be more human? Like, do we go into spirituality and go meditate the whole day? Do we like figure out what do we actually like doing or what are we talented in? And once we do, what do we do with that? Like, who's helping us do that. There's not
Right.
really a path forward. So I think what AI is doing is fine. Take the jobs, but we should be thinking about, okay, so then what happens to the people? So I think what I'm excited about is we'll have a very balanced conversation. People will hear real time, like what's changing and how these big leaders and very known people are thinking about AI and technology. And I think as we discuss what happens to the people, hopefully those ideas will be something that can be brought to life by someone who's passionate about this just as much as we are and wants to dedicate the capital to actually making it happen. So I'm
Right.
very, very excited about that.
That's
Well,
what I'm looking for. I look forward to innovation from people and see what
yeah.
people can innovate, right? And so this is just one. My last point is, like I said, we don't know what we don't know. When the X-ray machine was invented, nobody even thought about looking inside of the body, right? You know what I mean? So if we don't think about these things, if we don't
Yeah.
think about the impossible, and then go out and invent those things. I mean, Tesla invented the X-ray machine in his apartment. And he X-rayed his foot. And that was the very first X-ray ever taken, and it was inside of a shoe. You know, well, AI would have never thought to do that. It would have used existing technologies and found a workaround, right? Because
Yeah.
it uses data.
It
It
uses what it
uses
knows.
it uses what it knows. That's right. So people need to come up with what we don't know.
Oh, it's so much more like playing in the playground with crayons
Yeah.
and squishy toys than it is being a mad scientist to encourage people to think outside the box. And this is a real story, okay? A bunch of executives at General Electric got together and they were trying to figure out how to get rid of snow ice formations that were forming around the power lines in mountains. Because it's very dangerous. Actually, it was a job where
Yeah.
humans have to climb up these poles and shake the power lines to get the snow off, or else it damages the power line. I was encouraging executives in these workshops to think outside the box. The biggest point about what we're encouraging them of is think about the most ridiculous ideas. Like if you had to make it funny or completely like, oh my god, this will never work, put that down. Just put that down because if you collect people from all different backgrounds and industries and they put crazy ideas down, the crazier the better, something comes out of it. And what do you know? One of the technology guys, scientists, I think, he was like, well, he's just trying to be funny. He's like, well, we should incentivize bears to go to the power lines and we should have them shake the pole. The bear shakes the pole, the ice comes off, you don't need a person, they're strong enough. And someone else was sitting in the room and was like, wait a minute, if we just need something to shake the pole and shake the power lines other than a human, we have all these helicopters that we own that we don't really do anything with in the winter, especially. So we could have helicopters fly around, and with the power of the rotors, it can shake off the ice. This was the way that they were
They still
shaking
do
off
it.
shaking ice off. So crazy ideas are great, but we're not encouraged to be. We're always encouraged to be in this box, and that's
Yeah.
and that's what's keeping us in the box. And I want to allow people the space to be like, okay, well, if we could do anything, we could make it great, and we can monetize whatever it is. Like, what would we monetize? Like, what would it look like? And eventually, I think we're going to come up with a number of really great points of view that are possible, and all they need is funding. Getting people behind that will be just one next one next very possible step.
I can't wait for episode 1000 when we're looking back at this. It's going to be great.